Sam Shoemaker wrote a poem, I Stand by the Door. I liken this poem to being the church. I stand by the door. I neither go too far in nor stay too far out. The door is the most important door in the world. It is the door through which men walk when they find God. There's no use my going way inside and staying there when so many are still outside. And they, as much as I, crave to know where the door is. And all that so many ever find is only the wall where a door ought to be. They creep along the wall like blind men with outstretched, groping hands, feeling for a door, knowing there must be a door. Yet they never find it. So I stand by the door. The most tremendous thing in the world is for men to find that door, the door that leads to God. The most important thing any man can do is to take hold of one of those blind, groping hands and put it on the latch that only clicks and opens to the man's own hand. Men die outside that door, as starving beggars die on cold nights in cruel cities in the dead of winter. They die for want of what is within their grasp. They live on the other side of that door. They live to find it. Nothing else matters compared to helping them find the door and open it and walk in it and find Him. So I stand by the door. Go in, great saints, go all the way in. Go way down into the cavernous cellars and way up into the spacious attics, into the vast roomy house, this house where God is. Go into the deepest of hidden casements, of withdrawal, of silence, of sainthood. Some must inhabit those inner rooms and know the depths and the heights of God, and then call outside to the rest of us how wonderful it is inside. Sometimes I take a deeper look in. Sometimes I venture a little farther in, but my place seems to be a little closer to the opening. So I stand by the door. The people too far in do not see how near some are to leaving. Those too far in seem preoccupied with the wonder of it all. Somebody must watch for those who have just entered the door but would like to run away. So for them too, I stand by the door. I admire the people who go way in, but I wish they would not forget how it was before they got in. Then they would be able to help the people who have not even found the door, or the people who want to run away again from God. You can go too deeply in, and you can stay too long, and you can forget the people outside the door. As for me, I shall take my old accustomed place, near enough to God to hear Him, and know He is there, but not so far from men as not to hear them, and remember they are there too. Where? Outside the door. Thousands of them, millions of them, billions of them. But more important for me, one of them, 2 of them, 10 of them, whose hands I am intended to put on the latch. So I shall stand by the door and wait for those who seek it. I had rather be a doorkeeper. So I stand by the door.
Greetings and welcome to the Friday Morning Nameless. I'm Chad the Alcoholic, and do I have a show for you? This might just be the best show that ever happened of all time. So today I have some very special guests. We have something a new series that I'm starting right now, or that was started over here, called the Friday Morning Frameless. I have no idea what that means, but it sounded like a cool thing to do. And so this is that episode. Today we have Lance. You all know Lance. Say hello, Lance. Hi, Lance. We have the General Grim down there. Say hi, Griz. And we have Clara.
Hi, Clara.
Say hi, Clara. Okay, guys. This is going to be very strange. I have no idea what is about to happen, but I would like you to get to know Clara. Clara, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us all about why you are here?
Well, hi. Why I'm here is it's an existential question beyond me, but I am really grateful for you having me here. I'm a sociologist. I study how people move into and out of their religious identities, other identities, and I'm really interested in kind of seeing what's happening in the corner, how people got here, what they do, what they might do next. Yeah.
Now,
how did you find Clara? How did you find PVK?
I actually started this project a long time ago. I sit in a coffee shop and I do maybe what you might think of as randos conversations. I talk to people about these things. And one of my friends there at the coffee shop sort of drew the connection, excuse me, has been telling me about this community for a long time and then introduced me to this world.
Yeah. So I ended up getting an email from Claire, and she says, so my friend Sourdough Neil sent me your way, and so I'd like to talk to you. I was like, oh, this is really interesting, and so I called Neil today to ask him about you a little bit, and he's like, oh, that's so cool. She's gonna come on and stuff. And so Sourdough Neil gets his name from yours truly down here. And
amazing. I eat his bread. So
is it good? See, now I met him over the weekend. I went to his church actually, which was really quite the
very cool.
So yeah, because I have some in-laws that live down about 22 minutes from his church. So that was yeah.
You have a good time? How many times have you been to an Orthodox church?
That's the first time. Yeah. And it was great other than the standing part. But I was like really impressed. It was some of the most beautiful singing that I'd ever heard. There was like the whole liturgy was about 95% singing, which was like what? It was all in English, and the smells and bells. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. The part about the standing that I did like was like there was this bit of suffering that was happening. Like you can feel every part of your body that aches, that you don't normally feel aching. You feel it all ache. And I thought that was like an interesting embodied experience as it relates to, a worship setting. So, Griz, do you have anything that you'd like to do right off the bat here? Or
no.
Say? Oh, I'm shocked. No savings throws. We're not going to get any savings throws.
One-time pass. We're vulnerable to this Clara person. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Well, any questions? Anybody? No?
Let's shoot.
Clara, you can kick us off here. Tell us about your project.
My project? I have the academic explanation in my head, but I feel like you don't need that. I see people, like Neil does, sitting in the coffee shop and going to churches and building this community, but then they're all connected to this space online. So my goal right now is to find out everything there is to find out about this space online. Like I don't know. Can I ask Grim a question maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Grim, I'm sorry, your channel's kind of impenetrable, but I love it, and that's a vibe I hear. I'm wondering why. How did this get started? What's going on there?
Well, some concepts started before YouTube and came to YouTube from a different streaming platform. There was a man named Andrew who used sigil magic to get a conversation with Jordan Peterson, and where he talked about how he struggled with pornography. And that was the launch of the Sorting Myself Out channel. At one point, he had this weird guy on who said he was he had learned to manage his bipolar. And long story short, bald guy with the porn thing leaves the show and gives it off to the bipolar fella and another kid. And I was exiting the YouTube truther community at the time. But there I had learned that people that watched channels together would get together on Discords and organize and do group activities and stuff on there. And so I pitched the notion when the redhead kid and the weird guy inherited the channel.
Wait, which one had bipolar?
The weird guy. Okay. The redhead kid was pitching himself as a therapist doing Gestalt therapy. And and anyway, so I pitched them the notion of having a Discord and making the channel a community of us sorting ourselves out, which would have a better acronym of like TSOO, because that's fun to do. But they did take the Discord idea. Then the redhead kid left the channel. And then so it was me and the weird guy trying to keep the channel afloat. And then we had some disagreements and parted ways, at which time I leaned harder into my own channel. But through that whole effort, since it was tied to Peterson, it let me do my initial connection with Pastor Paul Vandeklees and what he had going with the Bridges of Meaning Discord community.
Okay, so PBK, he's a pastor. Does that influence you in your religious stuff?
Yeah, I really like to give him a hard time about how little he talks about Jesus.
Okay.
And how much he talks about church. And so like him being so trollable really has influenced this whole project for me.
If you had to describe your channel to someone who knew nothing about it, I think like a 10-word description.
It's a live stream brought to you by the Virtually Not Alone Network, where the hive mind gathers. That 10 words? Oh.
What are you hoping to accomplish?
That the people stuck in their cells without human interaction get parasocial human interaction with me and together in the chats of the shows we watch together.
Yeah, man. Thanks for indulging that.
So I'll ask you, Clara. What do you find when you're watching, let's say, Griz's show? Like, what's your initial takeaway?
Impenetrable, Chad. She told us already.
Right. I'm not trying to hate. I'm trying to learn. But I love that there's all sorts of different people here getting together, giving perspectives that I don't like. I sort of inhabit this tiny little corner of the world, you know, this academic silo people talk about, and I don't get to hear and see other ways of thinking about things.
Well, just so that you're in good company, know that most people have the experience. Like when I first was watching Griz's show, I was like, what is happening? Like, I didn't understand the savings throws. I didn't understand, the tech, remember embody. There is no agency. Like it takes a while. And I actually have this clip that I'd like to play.
Good. I need coffee. Excellent timing.
Yeah, I'm going to play this clip. Now, this clip, I think, does a really good job of kind of laying out what I think the essence of Griz's channel is. So this kind of has a nice explanation for some of your sentiments.
I don't know, just something about storytelling that we've lost it with our modern ways of telling.
Yes. Do you know what? We've retained personal narrative. So in every family, there's somebody that's good at telling the stories of their family. There's an aunt or an uncle, you know. So I was on tour in Ireland, and one of the things that you notice is that everybody is a raconteur. Everybody has the gift of making quite magical something that happened on the way to the bus that morning. Now, in a mythically literate culture, you would be able to take a personal anecdote, maybe something that's quite difficult, and you can see how the wingtip of that experience touches a myth or a fairy tale. Could be the story of David and Goliath. But in one way or another, stories help us reach out to the universe. They orientate us and they settle us. But if all you've got is me, if the only temple you serve in is the one that you gaze in all day long, those stories are going to get awfully thinned out. So you end up with a sort of a facsimile or a photocopy of something. 200 years ago, a new story arriving was an event in a village. And the storyteller would come and go, and then we'd all have to remember it. And we'd all remember it slightly differently.
Yeah.
So the reason why I like what I see Griz doing is very much like he's like a mythology storyteller in some sense. Like, this is why you can't, it's impenetrable, because a lot of this stuff is impenetrable. A lot of the language is like, I remember I sent my dad some of these videos from different channels, and he's like, I have no idea what the hell you guys are talking about. And it's like, yeah, sometimes I don't either, most of the time probably, but so that's, I don't know how else to describe that other than it's a kind of, I don't know. I don't know. Lance, what do you think? Or do
No, I think, and so for me, and I'd say this, how I found my way into this little corner, I'm different than everyone else. I'd actually was searching for a sermon on a particular topic, and Pastor Paul Vanderklay's a sermon came up, and I watched it. And by the way, I loved it because it was low production value and everything. And I was a house church pastor. I love that aspect of it. It was really interesting. He was talking about things that were like, wow, he's talking about that in church. So that was wild. And then the algorithm kicked up Grimm's first randos conversation with Paul Vanderklay. And I was just mesmerized. And I hang out with a lot of guys who are kind of like Grimm in a certain way, not really normies. And so I was just, first off, I thought he was just an interesting character. I was very impressed that Paul Vanderklay, a guy with status, is talking to this random guy. I just thought that was like, what is going on here? And so I found my way in the bottom of YouTube to this Bridges of Meaning Discord, and then I jump in, and there are all these amazing conversations going on with these with awesome people. It was wild, and it was something that wasn't existing, out in the world. What I really like about Grimm is Grimm sees things that, and I would just use the term normie, which I fit into that realm to a certain extent. Although I might be called a conspiracy theorist by some. But he sees these threads, and he has this amazing ability to grab this little piece of this conversation and ties it into this movie. And he finds these threads and is just pointing them, kind of trying to bring these signals out so people can see, quite frankly, how we're under so much control, right? And plus he does it with a great sense of humor, which is just it's hilarious to watch those things. I really like the community that came out around him. So the people that come in and start chatting in his chats, it's funny. There's a language that comes up with those folks and those people. And so for me, He behind all that, he's pointing out these things for people to see them, and hopefully they can see them. But he doesn't hit you over the head with it. Like he likes, he makes you work for it a little bit, right? And so, he doesn't try and tell you exactly what he's trying to show you. And that's part of the thing. He's trying to teach you how to figure some of this stuff out on your own, right? And there is this sense of that virtually not alone. And so kind of the cast of characters that he brings together are people that may have been before this place had, you can't have the types of conversations or hang out with people or whatever. And so that's why I really like, I like Grimm's channel. And I made this one comment about Grimm, and I still think it's true. I think Grimm is the sort of guy that would, if Jesus were to come back or whatever, in some sense, he would spot Jesus faster than most Christians on this earth. I think he'd get it. I think he'd see to it. He sees the thing behind the thing. So there's a method to his madness, and so that's what I like about what Grimm is doing. And I think and that's why there's a reason why Paul highlights him so much. He's an extremely valuable person in his corner.
Well, and the other part about the highlighting thing I think is interesting. Like Paul will do this thing where he kind of like, he doesn't necessarily reach up the hierarchy, he does more reaching down. Part of that is, I think, like it's a signal to anybody like maybe yourself who is interested in like maybe intrigued by participating or something, or getting to know people more. It's like, these are the people you're going to be running into, just so you know. Like they, and I personally think that we're not all that weird, to be honest. I know this seems weird. I'm wearing a mask. I have my reason, and I guess it's weird, but I don't think it's that weird, to be honest. I think what's more weird is how long most people have seemingly been asleep at the wheel. That to me is more weird. And I've really been thinking a lot about this lately. Yesterday I kind of had just a shit show of a day in the morning, and then as the day went on, I got to listen to a couple different things, and I was struck by a gratitude. Like I couldn't really even believe. Like I'm thinking, maybe I'm just grandiose, but I really feel grateful that whatever is happening, I'm really grateful that I got to meet these people, because I think that there's something greater than we can articulate, and probably we shouldn't articulate it. And but it's inspiring, it's fun, it's I don't know. I think it's invigorating, enriching, all that kinds of stuff, and annoying sometimes, So.
Wait, why annoying?
What's that?
It's invigorating, and sometimes it's annoying.
Yes, yeah. It's like characters can be annoying. Like they're, not everybody gets along all the time. So like that's the hard part, because for me personally, conflict isn't really something that I'm good at or enjoy. So when they happen, I'm generally the kind of guy that wants to take my ball and go home. You know what I mean? And so that's where the annoyance happens. It's like, and that doesn't happen as often. It doesn't happen that often, but when it does happen, it's a pain in the ass.
I sense you're thinking of a particular example.
Well, I don't know if I would want to do that, because
that's fine.
Because I don't think kicking up ashes is a good thing necessarily. But it's just when certain people say things that aren't seemingly kind or let's say, it just seems like, well, that was just a really stupid and brash thing to say, and then it's just like a drama can begin there, and that's just very annoying. Now, generally, we can see that at this point, you can see those things kind of coming from a mile away. So I've learned to kind of just not converse with people, or watch certain content, because it's just going to cause me a discomfort, which is going to it's going to diminish my usefulness. So,
and it's all the things of like human annoyances, right? Like to some extent, like, I mean, we all come here, at least I'm of the, if you were saying, I'm of the PVK portion of the little corner. You have Pasho and you have Vervaeke and stuff. Like I'm on the PVK group. And so, some of the annoyances would be, I mean, Paul models very good faith dialogue, right? Like we're going to have good conversations. Let people come in. And so, if some people want to come in and they want to be ideologues and kind of people that just want to come in and not participate in a way that kind of Paul models, I think that can frustrate some of us. I think people are also pretty vulnerable around here, particularly if they stick around here a little bit. Like, again, a lot of this started on Discord. Like, most of the conversations aren't happening online. Like, they're happening in Signal, they're happening in Discords. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. But people start sharing some of their most sacred ideas or the things they really believe. And then if you have someone, even if it's good faith dialogos, who starts challenging you about some of those core things, like that you start pulling the cards out of someone's house of cards, like, because that it can be a hot button issue, so on and so forth. So, some of that can happen. And then it's just, you get a bunch of people who are sharing this sorts of stuff. I mean, we're human beings, and some people just are annoying. They just are, right? And there's, like, I probably have some people that probably like some of the things that I share or some of the positions I take. And then there are certain people that I probably annoy the hell out of, because I am poking them right in certain propositions. Like, I have a certain, I'm come within certain things. I do have passion about certain things. So I'll start poking them right in something that's like at the core of, like, maybe even their religious belief. And you want to piss somebody off. Well, you do that.
Do people get pissed off in the corner? Is that something that happens?
oh yeah, that's happened.
Yeah.
I must have quit like twice already. And I called Griz twice on his phone, and both times. Like, that's my favorite part about this, is being able to have connections with people that, like Lance was saying, where it's like not online. I love doing these conversations. I love the creative process, the thing that goes into, like, the different, for lack of a better word, the production, like, or whether, like, Griz's brandings, or if it's the pulling clips off of other channels and looming them together. All that stuff is really great, and the conversations are, like I said, they're maybe inspiring or whatever. They're fun. It's fun. It's a type of play. All of that's really good. But I really, like, there's a guy I talk with every morning that I met online here. Plus, I have at least a dozen phone numbers of people that I talk to on a regular basis. And that's not just, and they're not the only people I'm talking to. So I also have, my community here in Wisconsin on the ground. Those people I'm involved with as well. So it doesn't pull me away. So, yeah.
When you talk about your community locally, I think I heard you say you go to a Lutheran church. Is that what you mean?
I do. Yep. Yeah. I go to, so, yeah. Well, I started out in a different church, some non-denominational church, a few years ago, and I got baptized there. And then I ended up just getting out of that church because it was a little iffy. And after that, I asked my wife if she wanted to help find a church. because I thought it would be good to have her along for the ride if she would do it with me. And so she did a lot of different research, and we found a church that we were at for a bit. And then after we bought our house, we ended up going to this other church that's closer to home, about 8 minutes from the house here. And yeah, that's Lutheran. But am I a Lutheran? I don't think so. I don't. I think I'm a Lutheran as it relates to like my membership at the church, but I wouldn't call myself a Lutheran.
So what brought you in the corner, Chad? Tell her.
What brought me into the corner? Well, so I was on the job site listening to I think it started out with audiobooks, and then my best friend was like listening to Joe Rogan one day, and I was like, "What are you listening to?" He's like, "I'm listening to Joe Rogan." And I'm like, "Oh, interesting." Well, and so then I went to listen to some Joe Rogan. The first episode I was listening to was this dude Nicholas Christakis. He wrote a book called Blueprint. I think it's something, The Blueprint. And it was really good, and I got that book, and then I started listening to more stuff, and then ended up tripping over Jordan Peterson, which was intriguing to me because, like, I think he had a, he had a charisma. There was a, he's a good storyteller, and so he can capture your attention really well. And then he starts saying things, giving information about historical moments that I never was taught about, and I was like, how the hell was I not taught this stuff, And so that was like, I was like kind of hooked at that moment, and I started listening to the biblical lectures. And I wasn't a Christian at the time. I think I was about 7 years sober in AA, and so I wasn't a Christian, but I was already praying and doing prayers and helping others and stuff. So I had a spiritual life, but I was intrigued by his Peterson's biblical series on the Genesis lectures, and from there I just started listening to all the classroom stuff. Which I think all the people who were around at that time would say the classroom lectures, especially from like 2015, 2016, are the best. That's the best stuff that he has. So I started listening to that stuff, and I did trip over a Paul Vanderklay video early on. I wasn't intrigued by him. I thought he was kind of annoying. He would lose track, and I thought he was like grifting off of Peterson or something. So I had this idea that there's something about him I didn't like, so I stopped listening. And then after when 2019 around there, we heard less and less Peterson. He was sick, and I just started listening to more and more audiobooks, like a ton of them. Mm-hmm. And that whole time I was wondering, and then the COVID thing happened, and then throughout that whole thing I was thinking, where the hell is Peterson? What? I wonder what he thinks about this stuff. I had also been thinking, I wonder if he's gonna go. How do I say this? I know I'm rambling, but so I had some pretty hard, rigid spells in my recovery where I was like, you need to do things a certain way. When I was trying to sponsor guys and help them, I was like, you need to read the book this way, and this is the only way, and yada yada. So I had my own run-ins with orderliness, let's say, and I got sick in sobriety, which means I started disconnecting from people, and my world got really small, and I eventually it got so small that it kind of crushed me, and I came out of that, and And I started wondering if Peterson was ever going to run into some problems like that. Anyways, so during the COVID time, I was thinking, where's Peterson? And then he came back, and he had this conversation with Jonathan Bijot, this really, I think, pivotal conversation in both of Jonathan Bijot and Jordan Peterson's career, which was like, and I think it will probably go down as to be something very, very historic. And I only think that because of all the different people who have mentioned this conversation and the moment in that conversation where Peterson talks about he has a sense that the objective world and the narrative world touch, but he didn't know how that worked. And as he said that, he was weeping. But I was right there too, because in my AA world, I was thinking, like this God of my understanding bit, although it's working, it's kind of running out of, like, I feel like I'm reaching the end of this God of my understanding bit. And I was wondering how do the Christians make sense of Christianity? I had resentments against Christianity, and I couldn't wrap my mind around Christ. The whole thing was kind of, every time I hear the word Savior or Jesus Christ, I was just like snapped shut. And so right around that same time, Peterson and Jonathan Bijot have this conversation where I'm reaching the end of my God of my understanding bit. Like, it's not, like, I feel like I'm hitting the end of it. And something snapped to me, and I thought I need to reach out. I saw Vanderclay did a commentary on that video, and so I reached out to Paul, and Paul sent me to the Discord, and that's how I got here.
Do we have time for some clarification questions here?
Well, yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to get that. I mean, thank you for sharing. That's like, can I just ask? So you started out non-denom, but you weren't a Christian. You were praying and things. And this was after your recovery?
Yeah, during my recovery. I'm still in recovery. Yeah.
During your recovery. Did you, before that, did you have any type of spiritual or religious practice that maybe you grew up with? Or
No, not really. When I was about 12 years old, I went to go live with my dad, and he was in a mega church in San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived with him for about a year. And during that year, I ended up playing the thief on the cross at the Easter play, which is weird because, like, I'm this 12-year-old kid, and I'm in basically a sackcloth, carrying a cross across the like these 1,000 people, and getting it up the stage, and then getting on the cross and asking Jesus if I could be in the kingdom. It's so weird. But so I remember there was something about it that did speak to me. But when we leave the parking lot, life didn't line up, right? So, like, my dad I didn't think was acting very Christian. I'll just put it that way. So, like, I'm 12 years old, so it's easy to pick up a resentment there. So yeah, I had that, and then I ended up moving back to live with my mom. And later, when I was about 17, my mom lived in a parsonage next to a church, but I was already fully in my alcoholism. I was way more interested in smoking cigarettes, drinking, and girls, right? So, like, it didn't speak to me, and I was a very troubled person. So, yeah. But I would also say that my journey with alcohol itself was a spiritual experience, a spiritual journey. So, yeah.
How was your journey with alcoholism a spiritual journey? And does it come up in the, like, I mean, I've heard you talk about it.
Yeah, it's a spiritual. I think alcohol or anything that lights you up, like alcohol lit me up. I mean, that's a spiritual experience. I mean, there's a connection there that gets me connected. It helps me feel like a person, you know. And so alcohol was always something that would just make me feel like a person. And so when, you know, people have this, I mean, I know plenty of people who have not used any substances who have different things in their lives that there's that kind of power for them. And I mean, what I come to find is it's an insufficient power, but it does work for a really long time. The problem is, you know, not being able to manage that power very well.
I don't want to monopolize the conversation here.
But yeah, no, if you got questions, it's really good to ask anybody. If you want to ask anybody, that'd be great.
I mean, are these relatable topics? Do y'all talk about? I mean, I'm really I do a lot of work and have a lot of interest in how people sort of come into their sort of identities, and so it's really interesting to me, sort of how that's happening in the corner, but also how that's happening in people's kind of life trajectories. So it's very interesting to me. I think I've heard each of you say that you identify as Christians. Is that right?
I don't identify thusly.
Oh, okay. Help me out.
I mean, I'll say Christ is Lord, but I don't like when part of the reason I trolled Vanderklay so hard in the beginning is because when I thought of Christian, I saw Ned Flanders. And then I also saw what was going on in the society around, like the way everybody just caved to lockdowns, how church was non-essential, and it wasn't God deciding who died, it was whether or not you wore a mask. And those levels of like what I thought would be faith, like didn't pan out. And that the state had advanced to a war on human contact, and everybody was being shoved in the internet, which, you know, it's fine for a handful of people to sit in the basement and play video games and be stuck only interacting this way. But for the majority of society to function, that can't be the way it is. And that's what was happening. There's no, I personally, I don't wear the Christian label.
Sure.
For me, the word means Christ-like, and he never went around saying, "I'm like me, I'm Christian." So, to me, it's a political identity, and not. I don't know. Do you hold the flame? Is more a better question. But.
Okay, so can I ask? Graham, did you grow up in a home where you had any kind of religious identities, or when did you kind of? Sorry to ask two questions at once. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you came to kind of where you are now?
I turned Pentecostal for a while, but then I saw Fight Club, and that reality was more reflective of the reality I saw. It was like church was kind of like a time capsule of how things used to be, and it wasn't matching the reality I was living in. So
the question I have around you, like, so when you're saying identity, I find that an interesting word. It's kind of a charged word right now. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, no. So I'm curious, why that? Why identity?
Why identity? I don't mean it to be a charged word. I mean it to be a descriptor of how I see myself in the world. So that's kind of what I mean. I don't want to dig into identity politics, you know. So people have many different types of identities. Yeah. So I guess I kind of wonder why does it come off as is it because of like sort of the sex gender identity kind of debate that's going on right now? Is it because of like what makes identity charged? Can I ask? Is that okay?
Oh yeah,
No, that's
anything you like.
Yeah, no, I think so. So for me, which is, I think, so if you would ask myself, it is, um, I think people are confused, and I would say it's Christians too, right? So I think people are, in some ways, I think some of the awakening is, I think that people think they can self determine that, like somehow you're self determining that.
Self-determined what?
It's not identity or whatever, like it's given to you or whatever, versus something that is.
Oh, okay. Okay. So if I use the word identity, that sounds like something that's determined by a person. Whereas if you use a different word, it's something that is.
No, I think I think that's some of the stuff that's kind of going on here, kind of right now, right? Like so, in recovery groups, there's this right before they get into their steps. There's this part where it talks about how it works, right? And it talks about things that some things before they get into telling you what the steps are.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks about some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. And if you think about that, that's ideas about yourself. That's ideas about God. It's like being willing to go on this spiritual path and start doing these practices. Then when you do that, and there's this wonderful part in We Agnostics which is right before it gets into the step work in the books that the recovery groups use. It's kind of talking to them, but the very last sentence is, when we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us, right? Okay. And so I think in a lot of ways, I do think a lot of people think they self-identify. I don't think they realize they aren't self-identifying. I think they're giving identifications. By the way, that happens within Christianity too. Right? Versus coming to an awakening and a realization of what is, right? And so you could go back to, if you'd ask me would I identify as a Christian, I would say no. Okay. Although I went to seminary, and it's the central part of what I am. I believe that I've become aware that I'm made in the image of God. I'm a child of God. And I try to do it very poorly. I try to live that, and I'd rather not call myself a Christian. I'd rather be recognized as one, if that makes sense, by the way I live. And I think there's a famous speaker that talked around recovery circles. His name was Chuck C. And people would ask him, can you describe your religion? He says, it's the way I live. Right. And so, and I think a lot of people, so a lot of people come here because there are meaning crises and stuff, or there's lots of different things that bring people here. I didn't have a crisis of trying to find wisdom, because I'm a part of recovery groups too, and 12-step recovery. So I have this massive amount of wisdom and practice that I can participate in, and community, like really good, honest community, like people who won't bullshit you because it's life and death. So it's really good, honest stuff. And then also I've been very blessed to be, I believe in the person of Jesus Christ. And I had a very powerful experience in that. I've struggled to try and figure out how to live that out and where that would place me. I've been a seeker with respect to that. And so, that's not really a meaning crisis that I had kind of coming in here. But I think a lot of people come in here trying to figure out like the deepest questions, those sorts of things. And I also think identity is kind of what you think about yourself and some of these other things versus who you really are. Okay. You know what I mean? Like at a core level and all this other stuff. So I guess I kick back at that a little bit. And again, so this is the perfect sort of conversation. You see what happens in the corner. Like, so I start hearing that and I start probing that. And that's why that's why I asked you kind of what that was all about.
I'm curious. So I'll give you a couple stories about identity. But first I want to know what you think. Why do you think identity is important?
Sure, I'm kind of blown away here by this dialogue. Because I sit in my little ivory tower and we use these words in a particular way, but so identity is important. There's a sort of a scholarly reason for including identity. It's how we sort of measure. We ask people, check a box on a survey. How do you identify? And I understand. I really like what you're saying there, Lance, about how identity is so much more complex, and that's kind of gets into the root of my question. It's sort of I'm looking at these people, and a lot of people have left, especially Protestant, evangelical Protestant circles, but they've kind of kept that identity. But like church attendance, all those things, there's a lot of moving pieces to identity. So I didn't answer your question at all, Chad. I'm sorry. Identity is important because it's in the literature, and I have to start somewhere, and I start with the literature. But what you're doing is powerful and real, and that's why I'm kind of doing this type of research to kind of hopefully share and I don't want to say uncover because y'all have already found it. I'm like Christopher Columbus here, but like
we're just groping around in the dark around here. Just
right.
Make sure so you understand we've been persuaded and we're trying to live our lives the best we can or whatever, but there's a lot of groping around in the dark. At least I'll just speak for myself. I'm sure Grim and Chad have it all figured out.
Well, only on Thursdays. So, okay, Clara.
Yeah.
Can you give me a personal answer?
Okay.
Not the one that you're afraid that not the answer, not the nice answer. Can you give me a personal answer? Why do you think identity is important for you?
Why do I think identity as a concept is important for me?
Yeah.
Identity, I think, matters. It's just sort of, and I'm making an argument that's different than. It's hard for me to separate Clara the scholar from Clara the person, but I'm making an argument that says, we have this way of looking at identity that's very static, stuck in one place, but actually, people change over time, and we can't really check that box on a survey. So when we're talking about identity, I see I've fallen into the trap here. So identity is important to me because it's how people talk about themselves, but not y'all. So there's more. I need to learn how y'all talk about yourselves.
I like that. Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple quick questions.
Yeah.
Just a quick one. You don't have to answer at length, but can you tell me about the home you grew up in?
Whoa! Now you're interviewing me, Chad.
Well, I want to try and demonstrate something.
Okay.
Like a 10-word answer.
What?
Just a 10-word answer.
Okay. The home. By home, you mean the building?
Sure.
Okay. The siding and a driveway. Kind of on a hill. I think that's 10.
Can you tell me about your parents?
I have two parents.
Okay. Now here's where identity comes in.
Okay.
Can you describe to me the way that the potato salad tasted that your mother made you?
My mom didn't make potato salad.
Okay. Well, there goes all my questions.
It had onions in it if she made it, and I didn't care for those.
Okay. So, like the reason, like,
yeah, Chad.
Like what I'm trying to get at is so I like potato salad, but I don't like all potato salad. In fact, I dislike most of it. But I can pick my mom's potato salad out of a lineup.
Yeah, you can.
And I really love it. In fact, it's one of my favorite things to eat. I don't get to eat it often, but I really love it. And I don't know why. I guess that there's something in there that is a piece of my identity. Now, will I be able to articulate that? Or as you said, measure it? No, I won't be able to.
Okay.
But that's a piece of my identity, a piece that I don't really think about often. Probably never, unless I'm doing something like this. But I know that it has shaped my identity in some way through the relationship that I have with my mother. And here's another thing about identity. So I was born with a cleft lip and cleft palate, and for, I don't know, 32 years of my life, there wasn't a day that would go by that I wouldn't recognize or think about the fact that I had a cleft lip and cleft palate. So I knew I had this thing. I was very aware of it. It was always somewhere back here in the back of my mind as a piece of who I am. This was a very big piece of identity for me. I don't know what that meant exactly. Maybe something to do with maybe how God wronged me, or it had something to do with how I viewed the world and how they picked on me. All these different things. And they came out sideways often. And then I ended up going through and having a series of transformations through the work that I did outside of the corner in my 12-step groups, and in the step work and things like that. And then I had this conversion experience and all this different stuff. I don't ever think about that whole thing about this cleft lip. This only ever comes up if I'm talking with telling somebody the story about talking about identity or transformation. That was a huge piece of business. Now, that wasn't something I actively tried to get rid of. It wasn't something that I drilled down in to really hone in on and will my way out of. It's just something that evaporated, like many of the things evaporated. So yeah, and then the identity thing is kind of weird, because I don't think I don't think much about identity, actually. I used to identify as a guitar player, a musician. I wanted to do that my whole life. So I had all these. I used to very much be kind of what's the word? Implicitly engaged in an identity game for most of my life, and now I would say that for the most part, now it doesn't really show up. Other than the fact that I'm a husband, I guess I could identify as that. I do identify as a husband, I guess. Yeah, that was just a strange rambling.
Do you identify as that, or are you that?
Oh, I'm definitely that. But
If I may.
Please, save this, please.
Your light. And if you know a lantern, you can adjust how the light goes in and out of it. And identity is a constellation of axiomatic shadow lanterns through which you project your light of selfhood. Much like Indra's web, you can't see yourself other than reflection, and the way you project your light reflects off the personality constellations of the people around you, and that's how you get your sense of self. The lanterns are axiomatic presuppositions, the lenses, the frames with which you view the world. Some of them you're aware of, a lot of them you're not. Those are shadow things you think about yourself, you're stupid, ugly, and not good enough. You might not know you think that about yourself, but it might be filtering some of the light that you are in one of your shadow lanterns. And I guess what you identify as are the ones you at least think you are or think you want to be. So that's what I think about that.
Nice. Nice. Well, do you have any other good questions for us?
It's not directed at me. I don't think I had any good questions yet. But sorry, my partner came in asking if I wanted pizza. No, I'm busy. But okay, so there's implicitly engaged in an identity game, Chad's thinking, versus Griz's kind of conception of identity and the self, kind of as something that's playing out over time, versus Lance's idea that identity isn't a real thing. We should really be thinking about what's essentially there. Is that right? Have I got everything right?
No, I was just asking the question. That's what we do. We start kind of probing around a little bit. But yeah, no, I do think. Do I think that we do? Do I understand that that's absolutely a thing, right? I don't know if I would use the word identity. I certainly, one of the people that I can lie. Well, I lie to myself more than I probably lie to anybody else. If I'm really honest about it, right? I think that that's kind of you really have to watch that self-deception, And then also, most people put on a mask and they go out and they, try and project, certain things or whatever. And sometimes you even believe that lie, or whatever. Usually, when you're around those people, it comes off pretty. You can see through a lot of that. You can tell when someone's genuine or when they aren't. You know what I mean? But I would say, one of the things that I guess through all the things that I've been through. So, for example, I've been through recovery. I've been in a rehab. That's an intense experience over a 30-day period. One of the things they'll do in that is they'll put you on a hot seat about 25 days in, and every person who goes around who's there tells you something that they think, basically points out something in you that maybe something where you're trying to bullshit people on something or some aspect of you that they see, whatever. And it can be a pretty brutal thing to go through. But the interesting thing, so why would they do that? Because at the end of the day, it's like, those are the sorts of things they're going to take you back out to drink and drug, right? Because if people care about you, right? Everyone's in there trying to fight to stay sober and everything else. And so you need to hear some of those hard truths about yourself, because you don't start getting honest, you're not gonna recover, right? And so I think ultimately where I've tried to get to, and by the way, this little corner has been it's helped my spirituality in a really big way. Because they held some mirrors up to me of some things that I didn't even know was bullshit, but it was bullshit. And part of it is trying to figure out really what is, like, who are you really? Like, who are you really? Not, I wanted to be this or I want to do that. No, who are you really at the end of the day? Not this program stuff that's come down. This is set, like Grimm talks about set and all these other things and so on and so forth. But kind of, who are you? And these are deep questions, right? Way beyond sexuality or any of these other sorts of things, right? So I know that people put on a lot of masks and play a lot of identities and so on and so forth. But I think the journey is deeper. That's what I would say. Do I understand that people have I played the identity game or whatever or so on and so forth? I'd probably just use different terminology, but yes, I'm not pushing back to say that the people don't identify and try and live out this identity or so on and so forth.
I feel like you're also saying there's a layer of bullshit to any identity because it's a performance.
For sure.
And, yeah.
You can't fit all that you are into a single moment or context. So something like that has to arise. and the ones that arise often and you use often and you get familiar with become what you think of yourself.
So,
And I think one of the deepest things that you can think about. I think this little corner really helped me to see this, and then also some of the transformations I went to. Because there's this concept of the unity and the multiplicity, right? One of the biggest things that can truly happen to you is when you realize your connectedness with every other living human being, right? It has nothing to do like with the politics and the hatred and the culture, all this stuff. It's not good. It's even your enemy, a person you hate more than anything, that you are connected to at a deep level. There is this, I see everyone as being made in the image of God. There's this connectedness, and for me, through Christ, he's the unifying point, and so on and so forth. So there's this unity, but we're all. There's only going to be one Grim in eternity, which is wild. Like you start thinking about that stuff, which is crazy. So there is this, ultimately what happens is when you get into that unity and the multiplicity, is a lot of this identity stuff falls away. And then when I say we're all children of God, like at the end of the day, like with that, that's when Christ comes out and says that love your enemy, right?
mm-hmm.
What he's meaning by that is that you don't have enemies in many ways, right? Like that's your brother, that's your sister, that is who you are connected to, right? And so that's the thing that breaks down all that stuff. And so, I think a lot of that stuff that we can see, and of course we have, I have lots of things about me that say who I am. I'm a white guy who was born in Nebraska, who has this sorts of thing. I have certain things that are the milieu that I went into, and I think more than what I think about myself. That's why I pointed to the how do I live, right? Like it's that speaks so much more than anything I think about myself. It's like what am I actually doing? There's this, you hear this thing, you try to get when your insides can match your outsides, you try and get how you act in the world to match truly who you want to be. That's when you really start living a life of freedom, and those are hard things to kind of come together in, and by the way, that's a daily struggle, at least for someone like me.
I'm wondering if I can ask, like, how do people in the corner and around, how do folks come to see this unity and multiplicity? How do they come to kind of achieve? I mean, I don't know if you all share in this sort of connectedness that Lance described, but like, how do folks come to that? Do they come to it, or is there a particular point?
That's me. So here's the deal. I'm just sharing my experience, my story, right? Or how I would see things, because you're trying to interested how do these different people come together, and here you got this Lance guy and you got this Grim guy and you got this Chad guy. You're going to talk to other people, like how do they see things? There's a wide spectrum of people in the corner, because there would be some people that would hear me. There are some people who hear me talk that way, and they will say that's a crock of shit, and we'll argue about it or have a dialogos about it, right? Hopefully, a good faith conversation.
Yeah. I don't think we could actually speak for anybody.
Yeah, I can't speak for. There are a lot of people that talk about those concepts. Like if you would go to Grail Country, like the people that are on Grail Country, that would be something that would really resonate and connect with a lot of the folks who are on there a lot. Those sorts of things. I think there are a decent amount of us that could see those sorts of things, but there are. You'll get I'm sure you'll get an answer for some people. Say, what do I identify as? No, they'll list it off. So we're a wide mix of people, but hopefully we come together and we can talk about these things, like ask some questions or whatever. We just talk about it in good faith, have a conversation, try to understand the person a little bit better. If you're really doing it well, doesn't mean you always agree with everyone, because I don't agree with everyone in this little corner of the internet. But what I do agree with is this, like Paul keeps talking about, like I think the thing that binds us together is love. I think it's people who, for the most part, people are seekers. They're seeking, I think we're all seeking God deep down, but seeking whatever they're seeking here. And hopefully you can come together with the great example he gives, and he models good faith conversations.
Well,
Paul lets people tell their stories. And if you watch the randos, like they're all over the place. There's some threads, but
I think there's a deep connection that happens that's hard to articulate. I think for me, connection, the idea of connecting with others is the most recurring thing. Like both of these two guys have stayed in my house before, and I spent a few days hanging out with Griz. I spent a few days hanging out with Lance, and those are all on different occasions, completely different occasions, and I have a connection with those guys, and there's a connection, and that happens in the conversations too. Like that's something that I would hear people often say. There's a couple things I would hear people often say. They would say things like when we first started talking about Jordan Peterson, they would say something like, man, he said something that I felt like I knew my whole life that I couldn't articulate. But when he said it, it's like, yes. Oh, so it's giving a name to something that's very difficult to articulate, especially if you're not educated with certain things. But it's beyond education and intellect. That's a connection point. It's connection there. And the other thing that I hear a lot of folks say, probably 90%, something like that, of people was they said, for years I was listening to this stuff and I had nobody to talk with about it. And so I think that's a common thing. Not everybody has that, but a lot of us do. And so there's an excitement and connection with conversation. I think that's what they mean by dialogos. It's like I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with somebody where it's just like conversation. It felt like it was like 10 minutes long, and you just had 2-hour conversation. It was like really, really powerful. Like that's, I think, a good definition of dialogos, something that hits. Now that's not a word I really like to use a lot because I really don't know exactly what the hell it means, but it doesn't seem to matter because I still have the thing that that I still experience it. So yeah, connection is connection in the positive sense. So,
and I think that's absolutely it. And so, like the conversations I have with people here, I don't have a lot of people in my real life that want to have these types of conversations. The one thing I would say is I didn't have I just realized this a couple months ago. My meaning crisis was when I was watching it really started happening with all this cultural war stuff. I was just seeing that this political stuff was not getting fixed. Something was broken, and I just could tell that something was wrong. I had faith. I have faith in everyday Americans that if given a chance to vote, they'll try and keep if you give normal people the opportunity, that they'll be able to keep it somewhere in the center, And then I was kind of a political wonk. So I knew certain counties, so I could track certain counties and when there were certain trends or whatever. And on that election night in 2020, when I went to bed and then I woke up at 6 a.m. and I saw all these weird anomalies, like the one that happened was in your state, Wisconsin, Chad, where they dropped 100% of all these votes. And the vote went like this, and it went to 300,000 overnight. And I realized they stopped all the voting. And when I woke up that morning, I knew immediately, oh my God, our votes don't matter anymore. And I only knew that because for 20 years I had tracked at this real detail level, and I saw these anomalies, and I saw them forcibly kicking people out of polling stations in Philadelphia. And I'm like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. This thing, I had this faith in the United States. I had this faith that this thing wasn't so corrupt that they literally would not give the regular people their opportunity to speak. And it became so obvious to me. So my meaning crisis was, and this was right before I hit the bridges of meeting, is, I had to try and figure out to like, oh, this thing is much more corrupt than I ever thought that it was. And this wasn't just one political party. I mean, this is just the whole thing was so far corrupt that the people weren't going to be able to have their say. And that I had to grieve that, because I just had this faith. And so, one of the things that really happened to me is that I needed to have that political thing totally smashed in me. And that was a good thing. Like that was, in some ways, almost the USA was an idol, like this belief in, of course we weren't as good as we needed to be, but there was this ideal that was out there that I believed my whole life. And so that was my meaning crisis. And what I realized was I didn't want to keep having the same conversations where people are just doing this, because that's not going to work. And that wasn't the solution. And so what I really liked about coming in here, the first thing that I was drawn to is people were having conversations about tough things, and they weren't stuck in the political, like they weren't arguing about red, blue stuff. Like they were talking about really interesting things and going back and forth. And so there was good faith dialogue going on. I found that first that fascinated me. But then the deeper I got to know and I got to meet these people, these are amazing. Like they're amazingly smart people. Some educated, some not. There was all this wisdom and there was all this stuff. It was it was quite fascinating to me, really, what was going on. And then the other thing that I didn't realize, but I came to realize, is I struggled with we call them Sunday school answers. So the really tough questions of life, like why is there human suffering? Like the questions you should ask, right? Like if there is a God, then why is there so much suffering in this world? Like if you just get some Sunday school answer, that doesn't do the trick for you. And even though I knew I had this faith, some of these, I just felt like I didn't realize how many of the answers that I, weren't good enough yet. And then people were having these depth conversations where I was able to take what was a lot of wisdom and a lot of things that I had, and I was able, it took it to the next level. And so the depth of what you can contemplate here is something that I've never experienced in any other group or community that I have. And so when you can do that, it's amazing. And the one thing our good friend Jess P, who's a part of this community, started talking about, where if you have these big hairy questions and they're not getting answered in your life, and it's lots of different types of big hairy questions you have, like the hard ones, when you can come together, when all of a sudden something clicks, like you understand it, like something makes sense. When that comes together in you, Jess said, that's healing. Like when you can integrate something, where you had this disconnect, or maybe you didn't know it exists, but when all of a sudden you can integrate something and you have that aha moment. And what that is like, once you've learned something, you'll never be the same again. Like once you know something and understand something at some level, and those tumblers go together, every now and again we have some of those moments, and those are those moments to where, like, so that'd be like that spark, that moment that Jess would call, that's healing, And I think a lot of what I've seen happen with people too, and I've seen transformation, and I've seen people move from, they were once one way and now they're this way, or they talk about the struggle they had and now they're this different way. I think that what happens in this little corner is people engage in these conversations and those things happen. I think what you see is a lot of healing. And so we talk about big, weighty, heavy things sometimes. And then the other times it's happened is I've met Chad in real life. I haven't met Grim yet. I got to get that taken care of. But I've had conversations with people offline where we've reached out and they, seek me. I saw other people out, where you start developing, relationship, and you can get, in a real private conversation, you can get really vulnerable with one another, about struggles you're having or those sorts of things. So I think that sort of thing that happens is, for me, what I think a lot, it's a part of the magic about what this little corner does.
I'd like to ramble for a couple.
Please do.
You say what are the things that brings the people here? I think are our commonalities, and a lot of those commonalities are, I think it's people who have been wrong for extended periods of their lives before, like for a matter of years, and come to the realization that they have been wrong. And I think that it's people who have noticed the polarization and corruption of their information sources, and have come, so they come with this package of what they believe and what they've thought, but they're open to the notion that they've been deceived. And basically we all start wandering around together, looking for what's not deception, because we're in this is an unprecedented time for humanity, when all of information is at our fingertips, and we can compare and contrast the different belief systems and see things why they are the way they are. We can follow the purchases of stock companies and find out that BlackRock and yada yada just own each other, and together they own everything. And all of this, we're all coming into this information, and it's way too much information for any of us. So we've come together, and we're trying to figure what's going on out together. And I see it as a sea of information, and I call it the fire ant flotilla, because like fire ants cling to each other in a flood to make a raft. And that's seemingly what we're doing with these channels and being together in the comments and such. So I think that we're all in that context, the modern human context together, and our trusted sources of information have become less trustworthy, that we're now trying to find, again, the human connection, particularly when we notice that when they clamp down on us, the human connection is what they're trying to sever. So that makes us cling to it and each other tighter, if we come to see that, at least. And who knows how much of what is coming together has been directed together by the algorithm, simply because we managed to have 3-hour videos that keep people watching for 3 hours, and that's what the algorithm likes. But all of this stuff, we're trying to figure it out together, and that's what brings us here, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good point, Grim. I think a decent chunk of people that have come here have had something they thought held, maybe a position they held deeply, that they've come to change, that they've come to learn something new, and have had some new revelation, and that takes a bit of open-mindedness to do that. I also think that what helps you do that is if you've experienced some sort of crisis of self, and you're asking, like I said, you're asking the big hairy questions and some of those other things. I think not everyone who comes in our little corner is open-minded, and there are certainly some people that probably haven't changed a whole heck of a lot, and then there are others that had massive transformations. So so one thing that happened to me, talk about calling out BS. So here's there's a few transformations, but here's the transformation that happened to me. I was a charismatic evangelical house church pastor, right? And I come in and somebody asked me a hard question, and this is a theological question, but I don't know if that matters to you, but it's around this concept of the penal substitutionary atonement theory of Christ's crucifixion. It's basically God was pouring his wrath down on, whatever, and so he had to pay the price for our dirtiness and everything else. And I had some milieu in that. I was Methodist or whatever, but at any rate, there was this conversation, and a good friend of mine, who's a really good friend now, Luke, says, what are you? Like, are you a pastor or something? Because I was annoying him the way I was preaching, kind of being preachy on this And then there was a woman named Sherry Suter who asked me, "It's like, why are you so sure of that?" And I listened to that, and one of the things that connected with me is like, I realized I needed to listen to that thing. And she didn't say it. She didn't say it in a mean way, but she also said it in a stern and honest way, right? And I immediately sensed that. So what do? I ended up started to think about that, and then all of a sudden I find myself reading like early patristics, like or the earliest Christian writings and stuff, and all this stuff, and I find myself being opened up to this whole world of this Orthodox Christianity. I'm like, what's this? I've been on this journey. I've been seeking everything else. Like I knew megachurch was failing, and that's why I did house churches. We could see the church collapsing in the United States, so people are moving to calling themselves nuns, which is a identity marker or whatever. You start to see that. But anyway, I saw that all these models weren't working, but I knew Christ was true, and I'm trying to figure out. I will leave my job. I left a legal career to go to seminary. Like I will do radical things to do this. So after 30 days, instead of reading about it, I wanted to see, and this is exactly what I said, is I want to see if this works. So I went down to my closest Orthodox church 5 minutes away because I wanted to start practicing like this stuff. And then I immediately saw this thing that was just so opposite of anything I'd ever been brought up in. And I immediately realized I was home, and there was lots of stuff that happened in that. And so I find myself coming here, trying to find a good faith place to talk about things as my political world collapsed or whatever this idea was. I come in here and I end up finding my way into now moving into becoming an Orthodox Christian. That's a radical change for charismatic house church pastor guy. But for me, one of the things I'm blessed with is like, but I've had to learn this, like I am willing to change based on new information, new understanding. That is something I'm passionate. I will say about those things. And so, that happened because someone was honest with me about something, and I was willing to kind of hear that. But that also goes back to, I had to learn some of those lessons the hard way. I mean, I'm in recovery, so I needed to get hit upside my head with some of these 2x4s, and I've had a lot of success in my life, but I also had this other thing which just almost utterly destroyed me too. And so I do think that one of the things I respect most or what I really love about this little corner is I can see it is like he talked about, is when somebody is open to really having a potential fundamental change. And so, I think that anyway, so that just was a little bit of time. We tell our stories or whatever, and you can kind of highlight some of those things. So if you would ask how the little corner has transformed me, that one voice chat on a BOM Discord server answered a lot of questions, some of which I didn't even know I had, and sent me on this entirely different path, my spiritual path that will continue forever.
Yeah, and I relate to that. Both of what Griz and Lance was saying about the so to the biggest pivotal moments for me in life revolved around the question of why am I saying that? Let me tell a quick story. So there's this book in recovery. It's called Living Sober, and a lot of my recovery heroes would go around and talk shit about that book. They said that book is stupid. It's not real recovery, and I really looked up to these guys, and so I never read the book. And when I heard other people saying that book is great, I would say, or they would talk about that book, I would say, oh, that book's bullshit. It's not real recovery. And this is around my rigid period, right? And then one day I said that stupid book, it's not real recovery. And then I caught myself saying it, and I was like, why am I saying that? And so I ended up having to read, like I took the initiative and read the book, because like I'm like, this is weird. Like, why am I just going around telling people that you know, something is bad if I've never read it, you know? And so I read the book, and then the first line of the book says that the complaint that these guys had was, they would say, it's not a real book of, it's not a program of action, right? Or for recovery. And so when I read the book, the first line in the book says, this book is not a program of recovery. And I was like, oh shit. Like, so anyways, what I learned there is I had my own experience with something, and it was a good experience, you know? And so from there, I started to question myself in a lot of different areas. If anything would, if I would notice that I'm saying something that I don't have experience with, that would, a lot of the pivotal moments for me happened around that attitude change. And so I think that's, and I only got there because of through you know, painfully hitting the wall time and time again. You know, it's like I didn't wake up one day and think, well, where the hell am I going wrong? Or, you know, like I'm just too kind of dense for that sort of thing. So I think that, I think that, I don't know. And so when I heard Peterson talking about that kind of stuff, I really identified with that too, because he would talk about when he was younger, he, you know, had this realization that he was saying all sorts of stuff that he didn't actually believe. And so like I connected with him on that. And yeah.
Speaking of saying things you don't really believe, I'm about out of time. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to hear from me before I go?
Can I just say I'm really sorry. I called your channel impenetrable.
He loves that. That'll probably be the theme. That'll probably be the theme of his next live stream. He loves that.
When you figure it out for yourself, it's yours. If I tell you, it's mine.
Yeah.
All right, bye, everybody. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Griz. So this is kind of strange because like I sense that, so you are wanting to ask questions, and you kind of have like an impenetrable armor up against being interviewed. I get that sense of that.
You spend too much time talking to Sourdough Neil.
No, it's when I asked you, because I asked you about what identity means to you, and it was just like, no, I'm going to skate around that.
Did I skate around that?
Yeah, oh yeah, totally. So in like, is that just a professional armor that you have on, or what is that?
I think there's two things going on. I think, you know, I put on the sociologist hat, right? And we have this kind of professional vibe that we're supposed to have, whatever. And then there's, you know, Clara, the person who's just really not good at this kind of, you know what I mean? I feel like that maybe sort of is what you're picking up on.
Okay. So yeah, you're having.
And to be fair, I would say this, like Chad and I, because we're trained in this a little way, like we get real quick and stuff. So that can be a little off-putting too. You're like, wow, you know, I get it. Because not everyone, yeah.
I dig deep, but I'm usually, you know, kind of in the interviewer seat. I think that's kind of, I'm usually asking the questions. I don't know.
No. So what I see happening here is, this is what I see a lot of people that end up staying in the lurk, because they have the kind of the intuition that you have about your own situation. Maybe you're not comfortable. There's lack of confidence. Maybe you don't. I don't mean that in like a degrading way. It's just like a lack of confidence. And here's what I get often. I would come on, but I don't feel like I have anything to offer. And that's what I mean. You know, people often will say that sort of thing. And it's like, man, you're a human being. You have stories, and you have tons to offer. And so I the only reason why I brought this up is because like I want to be able to ask you questions about your own personal experience with what it is that you're seeing. And because I think that it should be a two-way thing if you want to get the real experience of what's happening in the corner.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. But I will say, before this, I literally sat not in front of my computer, and practiced on my dog the ways that I was going to get out of personal questions if you asked them to me.
That happens a lot. I've talked to at least 5 people they said before I was having conversations with people, I would be driving down the road, and I'd be recording myself talking. So, or people would talk in the mirror and stuff. So you're in good company.
I think there's an inherent hypocrisy, I think, to my current position. But yeah. No, I hear what you're saying, Chad. Yeah, lots of people.
So, and by the way, and I'm still in Chad's thunder. Like, if you don't want this to be posted, this doesn't have to be posted either. Like, if it's something you wouldn't want to do.
That's true. But
I said you wouldn't want me to say that.
No, it's true. I think I told you that from the beginning.
I think it was implied from the beginning. No, I think I dig so much into people's lives. I think I really want to be in a place and really willing to put myself in a place where I think the way you said it, it's a two-way street. Mm-hmm. So I invite you, Chad. I don't want to give off.
So okay, the questions I just have, because I'm curious. I'll tell you like this. So I've noticed for the last maybe 4 years or something like this, maybe 5 years, I got the sense that it seemed like the culture at large had been becoming more and more susceptible to enchantment, which I think is a good thing. And so I started noticing people are becoming more interested in spiritual matters, whether it would be whatever. I don't care what side of the whatever, but they seem to have spiritual questions.
Sure.
And I often wondered, well, is it actually that's what's happening? Or is it just because I'm in recovery and constantly talking about God and all this stuff that I'm having this blue car effect where you constantly see blue cars when you have a blue car. So the question is something like, I want to know what you're experiencing upon as somebody who's newly tripped over this space. I want to know what that's like, because I don't know what it's like to trip over this space. Because by the time I got here, like, there was PBK. So I don't know what it's like to trip over this space exactly. I can tell you what after you answer, I'll tell you what my experience is like now. Excuse me. But I imagine my experience with tripping over, I didn't get to trip over this little corner of the internet. You know what I'm saying? I tripped over Paul Vanderklay and Jordan Peterson and, Joe Rogan. And that's,
And what he means by that is, like, in the early days, people were coming around because they kind of came through Paul. And so there weren't all these other people with all these YouTube channels. Mm-hmm. So everyone kind of would like watch Paul's video of the day, or they might watch Peugeot or a Peterson video. Or so there was this smaller amount of content. And then so everyone was this deal, like, is there were probably maybe only 2 videos out that were kind of part of the corner at that day. So it was a lot easier to like just watch a couple of those videos. And then what was really cool is because everyone, it's kind of like when, I'm old enough to remember when there were only 4 channels pre-cable. Like, everyone watched the same thing. So when you went to school, like when Michael Jackson did the moonwalk for the first time live on the Motown Live or whatever, we were all at school talking about, did you see that? Yeah, I saw that. It was amazing. Like, everyone watched Michael Jackson moonwalk live on TV. So there was this sense when you first came, it was a lot smaller. And then there were people doing something. And now you have all, which by the way, it's great. Now you have all these people and all these different channels, and the stuff is just kind of exploded out. So to try and come in and get your head around Grimm, and then what's this? Who's this guy in this luchador mask? Like, this is crazy. What's going on with that? And then we got Paul, and we got all these other sort of people. Now these people are doing these just chattings. Like, what is this? And so, kind of put a fine point on that. It is a lot to take in right now.
Well, the closest I have to tripping over the corner is right after that whole thing where Paul Vanderklay was doing his commentary on the Jordan Peterson, Jonathan Peugeot conversation. This channel called Randos United, they also did a conversation, so they had a whole bunch of videos, but I never heard of any. I never knew what that was, and I'm watching these guys. I'm thinking, like, who do these guys think they are? Like who? And also, who the hell are they? And then
the Randos United were Bridges of Meaning Discord members,
yes,
who would have conversations, and then it would be posted on, because Paul called it Randos Conversations, right? So the Randos United became where these individuals started doing these conversations and recording them and then uploading it to the Randos United channel.
Yeah, and they are still very good. I don't know, I think there's almost 700 videos over there, and they are fantastic. And I was very inspired by that concept of posting, of anybody can post, videos on that channel. I was inspired by that to do that here too. So, and that's the other thing, we're always kind of like, it's like trading ideas, and like all of my production on this channel now, almost all of it is inspired by the Grim Griz is Virtually Not Alone. I mean, things like this,
No. Well, we don't do that.
Things like that. That's something that, just excuse me. I have all this stuff is inspired. We've all inspired each other in some way or influenced each other to pick up these little tools and use this stuff. So it's very cool. I like to call it, like, this is play. We're playing, but it's a serious deal too. So, okay, now the question is, as somebody who has newly found this, like, what is your experience like? What are you seeing?
Wow, yeah. So I have to confess here. Howard O'Neill told me about all this stuff like over 2 years ago. And he's like, yeah, you're kind of doing what they're doing. And I said, that's a lot. Like, there's so much. I started looking up Jonathan Peugeot and Jordan Peterson and all these people. And I'm like, it's just, I didn't quite understand the significance of what was happening. And I didn't understand, like, sort of the meaning that if you sit and sort of listen to some of the content, you're like, wow, these people are really kind of cultivating this, this really rich. And then I guess you got T-Grog on there, and you're kind of like, he's the scapegoat. Okay. Sorry, man. We've all been there. And then you got people saying, we've all been there. So I don't know. Cause like the last time I was kind of tuned into this world was probably, mid 2010s, right? When you had Chris Hitchens and you had the New Atheist, Sam Harris, you had Richard Dawkins, some of these people and Daniel Dennett, kind of like jerks, but now you've got all of this pushback and that's how I see it. You get all of these people really sort of coming into this rich and meaningful conversation after maybe not being satisfied by that, and then maybe a whole lot going on that I just haven't figured out yet and don't know what's happening. So I feel like I'm missing a lot.
That's pretty good. I think actually, I think it's a lot more simple than, like, this is what's interesting about it for me. This is why yesterday I was thinking about, so I woke up yesterday, I was just in like just a funk. I was not in a good mood. I was feeling disconnected. Part of it has to do with for the last probably month and a half, the weather was really cold, and I can make up excuses, but I stepped away from my daily practice of walking the dogs, and during my dog walk, I was doing some different prayers and stuff like that were really helpful, and it's just so weird how something so simple can just get me connected. Well, I wasn't doing it, and so I'm coasting. The problem with coasting is you're always going downhill when you coast. So I'm coasting along, and I just, I'm naturally a discontented person. Like, I'm just a malcontent. And so what ends up happening is I'm just feeling a little disconnected. And yesterday morning was kind of like, I was just woke up and I'm just like, God damn it, dude. I got a momentary lapse of nihilism, and it comes and goes. Now here's where faith is. I know that it's just going to show up, and like, I know I can get out of it, and it's not a big deal. But it doesn't mean I can't stop myself from feeling it. So I wake up, I get up, I call Gavin. We're doing our morning thing. I even tell him by the end of that, I'm like, I just feel like shit, man. I don't know. And he doesn't try and fix me or anything like that. He just says, okay, And then I get to work. I'm working, and on comes Luke Thompson on the Grail Country stream, and it's pretty cool. And then, that's always a really nice thing to listen to. I love Luke, and I often talk to Luke in my private time and stuff like that too. And then, Gavin starts telling his story on there. I'm like, oh, this is really cool and stuff. And then Griz show comes on, and all the while I'm tiling this bathroom, and Griz show comes on, and it's a hilarious show. And I get to engage a little bit in the Hive Mind, which is the comment section. In case people don't know that, that's the live chat comment section. Is the Hive Mind, and it's a great show. And then I'm like, oh shit, Neil's got a conversation that's got released with Alan. So on the channel, I'm gonna go listen to that because I haven't listened to it. And I'm listening to it. And I'm like, this is such a really good conversation, man. It's like really good. And then like right after that, shit, Christian Baxter, this new baller comes up, and he releases a conversation with Mike Pilato, who I have scheduled in the next month to have a conversation with. So I'm like, I'm gonna listen to these guys talk. And holy shit, Mike Pilato is outstanding. Like, I'm like, wow. And while all this is happening, I just think, how did this happen? Like, how did we get to have this? Like, we don't understand, and maybe I'm being dramatic, but I don't think we understand how the potential that's sitting here. I don't think we do. I've spent the last 10 years, I'm coming up on 10 years of sobriety. I've spent a good portion of that studying the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I love Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've often wondered what it would have been like to be those guys who helped be the founders of AA. And I think, and I've thought that for for a very long time, and fascinated about how cool would it have been to be these two drunks to accidentally stumble over this thing and then watch something grow before your very eyes. And then I'm sitting here and I'm listening to my friends. I had every one of these guys' phone numbers, and I'm listening to these guys, and they are just like enjoying their time, having meaningful conversations. And I think maybe it felt like this. Maybe Bill and Bob and those early AA old timers, or those early guys, maybe it felt like this. And so I don't think we understand the potential. Now, again, I could be I could be speaking out of my ass and just being really dramatic. But I don't think that that's the case, because if this was just some fly-by-night bullshit, it would have died a long time ago.
Well, I think it's a Jordan, Jonathan Pajot, Jordan Peterson talk about this stuff all the time. It's like what you attend to, like what you focus on, like is going to manifest itself in your life. So if you're out there consuming all this junk that's out there, you know, I mean, you take on this sort of thing, and to be able to just participate and hear these conversations, which are so unique, right? And then people ask, like, again, they ask really hard questions. People are willing to think out loud, you know, and you're sitting back there like, oh my gosh, I've always thought about that. I didn't have the guts to ask it or whatever, or I didn't have anybody to talk about that with or whatever. There's this, it's to me, it's almost like what Chad talked about. It's like it's counter programming. And kind of that's how it's worked for me a little bit, in that I'm not getting sucked up into this other thing. And when I have time, and it's, you know, there's been peaks, like I've had time where I've had more time to focus, and other times I'm super busy where I just can't keep up at all. Like I went through for a few months where I just couldn't really, I watched very little or whatever, and was kind of a little bit involved with it. But when I actually am participating more and listening more and being a part of this community, like my spiritual life is better. Like spiritually, I'm a better person. It reminds me of these things that can get me into action in terms of practices and so on and so forth. And Bernardo Kastrup had this amazing book called is it the Mass Formation Psychosis or whatever? At any rate, he was talking about, like, with what's going on right now, is that what we need to do is we just need to speak, and really what we're putting out are beacons of light, and people will find their way here. And I think people come here for a lot of different reasons. But if you really want to kind of come down, when you think about, let's just take the Christian angle to it. Jonathan Pajot is clearly talking about Christian things in terms of a symbolic way and so on and so forth. Jordan Peterson really started to kick off. He had his biblical series, and he's contemplating all the big, hairy questions about God and so on and so forth, right? He tackled Genesis, and then he had his Exodus thing. Like, that's what he's about. Obviously, we're here because there's a pastor in Sacramento named Paul Vanderklay, who's clearly a Christian man, right? So even atheists or people who deconstructed or people who had left the church and been hurt by the church or whatever, all sorts of, where people come in and, you know, maybe they're struggling in some aspect, or, you know, or maybe they are Christian, whatever it is. There absolutely is a Christian element to this. Our desire is that, like, if T-Grog, like, I don't know if when he first showed up, like everyone, because he was in the comments, you know, making a lot of comments, and then he finally showed up on the screen, and literally people were cheering. And Grim highlighted this, like when he finally came up and showed up on the screen, because Paul jokes is that we're running out of atheists. And there's two reasons why we're running out of atheists. Is we're running out of atheists because a lot of the atheists come in atheists, and all of a sudden they find themselves going to church. So there's that problem, because atheists are becoming Christians as they come in this little corner. And then the other thing is like certain folks, because we don't play, if it's just, you won't come in and be able to have some sort of open-minded communication. Eventually this is going to frustrate you if you just keep wanting to do this, and we're kind of like, we get it, but were you open to seeing this? No, this. You know, at some point that becomes here. Yet you'll see someone like Grim, and he, like he said, he wouldn't identify like that. I think he's on his new thing, but I think Grim's still on his journey. I think that he says that pretty explicitly, you know, to some of the stuff. I think he's still on this journey. And so, you know, there definitely is, there absolutely is the Christian element. And again, if you're going to come through Pastor Vanderklay, if you're watching his YouTube channel, he's talking, you know, he has Sunday morning service. He's living still. He was always talking about that. People are asking questions, and he's talking about Christianity in this really interesting cultural monologue way. Like, it's incredible how he kind of paints this stuff around that. So there definitely is that draw that I think, even if people don't realize it, there's something about this Christianity that I think people are trying to figure out when they come into. You think that's fair, Chad?
Yeah, I think, yeah, like like, yeah, why is Tim Grogan, T Grog, why is he sticking around? I mean, like, well, there's clearly something here that he's getting the same kind of connection that I think I am. And like, I think, okay, so if there's any humility to any of this, it's that we all know that, well, most of us anyways, know that like the final answers on this shit, they're not, it's not about solving the problem or finding the answer to the problem. It's impossible. Like, it's an ongoing adventure. And there's a clip I want to play. Like, I was just watching this thing today, where Peugeot was over on talking to Justin Brierley. Have you guys seen this yet? I want to play this clip because, like, well, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should. What do you guys think? Should I play it?
Your channel, Chad.
I want to play this clip because, like, this is kind of like the adventure of it here. Like, I don't know if this is going to illustrate this, but we'll see.
I think what's really interesting to sort of pull out is so in a previous series, in a previous episode, we had the comedian Frank Skinner on, and he said this tiny little line where he just said, because he's a huge poetry fan, and so he took the line from John's prologue, but he said the poem became flesh and dwelt among us. And what he was trying to get at there was that Christianity is like this cosmic poetry. And so I've thought about that and kind of worked on that and dug away at that since. And this idea of we've got such a narrow understanding, but not always, because like you've pointed out, like sometimes we let it go, but in certain circumstances we have such a narrow understanding of what truth is and where it can be found. And yet the fact that 2,000 years later we're still coming to terms with this resurrection, is that not a place where truth of it can be found? Or the fact that we want it to be real, we crave it, that's C.S. Lewis, if I've got a desire that nothing in this world satisfies, it's probably because I was designed for another world.
And I, the way in another conversation that Louise Perry put it to me, she said, I just think my disenchanted brain still can't quite cope with the metaphysics of Christianity at this point. And I just wonder what practically, apart from just sort of bagging on about the wonderful symbolism, that's there, what can help someone who just is in that disenchanted state, but who's just not satisfied with the materialist worldview, to kind of step into this new story, basically?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not the same for every person, but I would say that you can come at it from the truth of the experience, first of all. And if you can't get to the fact of it, one of the other problems that is, again, people live in a world where fact of something happening is always seen at the level of a kind of, how can I say this? Like, that everything is equal in the way that it happened, that, that the resurrection of Christ is the same level of reality that me putting, like 2 spoonfuls of sugar into my coffee. Like, it's all equal, but that's not actually how it works. And when people try to account for the resurrection in materialist terms, they're just not going to be able to. It's just not there. It's not there in the text. The text makes a great effort to break that, and makes it very difficult for you to try to account for it in materialist terms in many ways, by the fact that Mary Magdalene doesn't recognize him, by the fact that the disciples don't recognize him, by the fact that there's all these things that that nobody saw the actual resurrection. Like, there's all these things in the text that are trying to tell you the resurrection happened. The tomb was empty. This is an event that is an event, but is also an event that you will not be able to reduce to chemical, material, like nitty gritty historical facts. So if you were looking for that, then you're not going to find it. But the problem is that you live in that world all the time. You don't live in a world where you actually have the nitty gritty historical proof for things. And the fact that people have this strange desire to find it there, particularly when they can see that that story is the foundation of Western civilization, is the foundation of our moral system, is the foundation of everything we think to be good today. But I can't go there. But nonetheless, I spend all my days living in a world where I don't need those facts in order to function. I don't need to like, I can't prove that my wife loves me. I can't prove that, like, there are all these things that you cannot prove historically. Anyways, all I'm saying is, at some point, you have to face the fact that we live in the Christian world. Our world has been transformed by Christ completely, utterly. We live in that world. We live in that story. And we cannot, if we deny the event of the incarnation, then we are undermining everything that we care about. Like, you're just undermining everything that is holding you together. And you cannot have Christianity without Christ. It's just not possible. They tried, the Enlightenment tried, and what you end up with is insane woke or communism or some perversion, like parasitical version of Christianity. But the fullness of Christ is bound in him, in the fact that he is the anchor of heaven and earth and holds everything together.
So, yeah, that clip does kind of get at what I'm getting at. Like, whatever this is, it can't be articulated, and Christ seems to be the thing that did bring well, it clearly did. Something happened in 2015 and 2016, and something bit Jordan Peterson in the ass to be able to talk about stuff, and then whatever that was woke up people when he started talking about it. I mean, it's so that's what I think. I don't know. That's why I think brings us together. And because, like Griz said, whatever it was that we were living in before doesn't seem to. It just, I don't know. It just seems to be a lot of BS. I don't know.
You know what I'm happy about tonight, Chad? I need to get going here pretty quick.
Yeah, I'm kind of burning out myself.
But God, I think, Clara, God bless you. You got a baptism in this little corner of the internet. First off, she had no idea she'd be sitting here for 2 hours. And then we're asking her questions.
I had a hunch. I had to text Howard O'Neill and make sure he actually talked to Chad. I'm just covering my bases here. No, I don't know. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, and then Chad sneak attacks you with me and Grim being on here too.
I'm like, what the hell happened, man? No, I really appreciate how open and welcoming you all have really been and talking to me and getting to really, really sharing with me. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate it and how excited I am to keep going.
Yeah. We should definitely do this again. I'd be very happy to have more conversations with you, as many as you'd like. And if there's other people that you'd like to talk with, let me know. And if anybody out there would like to talk to Clara, you can either email me and I can connect you with her, or I know she has an email, but probably doesn't want to give that out quite yet. Maybe check in a week or so, and then I'll put the email.
We'll make sure that people get a chance to hear, because you're going to get lots of different people. Are going to have all sorts of wild different stories from all across the spectrum. There'll probably be some threads you're going to pull on, but we're just but three humble participants in this little corner of the internet.
I want to hear everybody. Y'all are amazing.
Well, and also, I do want to have you on for your own personal rando story. I think that would be great. You know.
Let's warm up to that. Let's warm up to it.
I got you. I can say. Okay. All right. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to ask?
Let's, over time that it will unfurl. It will be great. I'd love to keep it going. Keep asking questions. I wrote down a lot of things while y'all were talking that really interest me, but in time, Chad, in time.
Cool. All right, everybody, say bye-bye.
God bless. Good luck, Clara.
Thanks.
Thank you, Clara.
happy. I want to be sad. I don't want to be happy. I want to be happy.
I want to be glad. I want to be happy and glad and never again be sad. I never will cry, I never will sigh, 'cause I want to be glad.
He never will cry, he never will sigh, 'cause he wants to be glad.